AI is changing a lot of things. Everything's faster. There are clear expectations that AI is going to make us more efficient. We are starting to see a lot of efficiency in the way people learn. If you're looking for a cheaper solution, you're going to go to YouTube, your ChatGPT, and you're going to try to get as far as you can
Yeah.
with some free solutions. At Anaconda, we have Anaconda Learning as our learning platform. We're finding with our own AI assistant, the majority of our users are using it for learning and exploration. Users who go through our Python instruction are getting through it faster.
Wow.
And they are more eager for more intermediate and advanced content. Users expect to get their education from these Gen AI tools.
There's going to be so much AI-generated learning content that floods the market that's low-quality resources.
Yeah, there's a lot of counterfeit content too.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at Amazon. There's just a ton of fake content out there. Oh, they saw a best-selling book. Someone tried to recreate it with AI. Didn't do a very good job. It confuses consumers. They don't know what to get.
Do you have any tips? You mentioned some of the trusted brands, trusted people.
So, for example,
Today's guest is Jess Haberman, Director of Product Content at Anaconda and a leading voice in AI education. One of the most trusted names in data education, she previously helped bring to life many of the data books you know and love at O'Reilly Media. In this episode, we dive deep into one of the most important and rapidly evolving topics in AI today, how AI is fundamentally reshaping the way we learn. We'll explore why AI is making traditional education models obsolete, and how platforms like Anaconda Learning are radically accelerating the learning process, the explosion of counterfeit AI content, and how to find authentic sources in a sea of AI-generated noise, why mastering AI tools isn't just optional anymore, it's essential, and how to effectively use AI to upgrade your skills and career, regardless of your background. If you're a student, educator, data scientist, product leader, or engineer, or you're simply curious about how AI will shape the future of education and professional growth, this conversation will help you navigate what's next and how to prepare. If you enjoy this conversation, don't forget to subscribe to Data Neighbor on your favorite podcast app and YouTube. It's the best way to stay updated, and it helps us keep bringing you more insightful conversations like this one. With that, let's dive into our conversation with Jess Haberman. Hey everyone, welcome back to Data Neighbors. Today we're diving into a pretty interesting topic around the future of education in the era of AI. So AI is evolving really fast, so is the way we learn about it. And to help us break it all down, we're thrilled to have Jess Haberman on the show. So Jess, Director of Product Content at Anaconda, where she's shaping the way people learn around Python, machine learning, AI, many other things. Before that, she spent years at O'Reilly Media, helping bring to life some of the most well-known data books that probably many of you know and love. She's been on the forefront of technical education, AI publishing, and open source learning. So today we're going to go deep into how AI is, transforming education, who should be learning AI, and what skills will matter most in the future. Jess, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Sean. Hi, thanks so much.
Welcome, Jess.
So to kick it off, kind of like a broad question, AI is moving really fast. And even, it seems like experts in the field are struggling to keep up. And you've spent your career at this intersection of technical publishing and education, data science, data engineering. So what's one way AI is already changing how people learn data science or data engineering or the data field that you think people don't realize perhaps?
Well, I think, AI is changing a lot of things. I think the way it's funny, I've been part of kind of traditional publishing and then moved over to tech. So that was that itself was a big change in terms of pacing and sort of the way we approach content and who our users are and things like that and what their problems are. So I think that AI is sort of changing pace again. Everything's faster. I think there are clear expectations from business leaders that AI is going to make us more efficient. And maybe some of their expectations are a little too ambitious. I think it may not be as quick as I think maybe they hope, but we are starting to see a lot of efficiency in the way that people learn. So an example of that is for folks who are, wanting to learn Python or wanting to learn data science, you don't have to start from a traditional sort of coding or software background. You can learn Python as you go because of Gen AI tools that help you sort of translate your thoughts into code or translate code into kind of education, and helping you become a little bit more data literate or code literate. So that is a really incredible use of Gen AI, and that really changes the way people think about learning software. And I'm not saying that folks shouldn't learn to code, but like they should use AI tools in their learning process, because like that is what they are actually really effective at. So we do see that practitioners that are going through, for example, at Anaconda, we have Anaconda Learning as our learning platform. So we are finding that users who go through our Python instruction are getting through it faster.
Wow.
And they are more eager for more intermediate and advanced content that we still have to build. Like, we began with a lot of the real foundations when we created this platform 2 years ago. So we've got some catching up to do in terms of like, oh great, they're ready for more advanced curriculum. Like, let's build that out. And now it's a little easier to build, which is great. So there's I think like the pacing is like the biggest change in terms of, and just that, like, we're finding, for example, with our own AI assistant, that the 85% or so, don't quote me exactly on the statistics, but like the majority of our users are using it for learning and exploration. So that's really great. And, a lot of are using it for code or testing or debugging, but the fact that, users expect to get their education from these Gen AI tools is a big change. So making sure that, I think that we all have work to do in making sure that if we're providing as a product, as a platform, an AI tool, that it includes our own perspective so that it is educating users the way we want. We want we want our users to learn the Anaconda way, so that's in progress. We've got to catch up with that too.
Yeah, it's kind of like I kind of try and purchase something when I use it, where it's like it's not just writing the code for me or like replacing what I'm doing, but kind of like teaching me like, all right, what's the way I usually goes like, give me a few different approaches and tell me why
Yeah.
these are good or these ones are bad.
Yeah, that's a great, I think it's like, it's building out this new skill in prompt engineering, is understanding like how to get the right output from your AI tool. So a little bit on the outside is like, how can a user be more effective in learning from the tool and sort of asking the right questions? And then on the back end, like, how are we building the tool so that it's trained to respond the way that we want, and that it's producing the right conversations, or the conversations that we want to encourage, sort of on the back end. So there's a little bit of both of those, but yeah, that's a new skill that I think we're all figuring out as we go. I don't think anyone's like really tapped into like the perfect way to work with an AI tool, and each tool is different. So I'm noticing a big change too, even just moving from, I've been using ChatGPT for quite a long time, and we just got Enterprise Claude through Anthropic at Anaconda, and just the different ways to work with a different tool. Like, what I love, just free plug for Claude, is like the enterprise version allows you to build projects so that you can work with other users and share conversations and share a
Nice.
project together. And like, that's really cool. So we're using that on our marketing team in terms of like all different kinds of projects, just to work together. Like, how, like, again, that's brand new, like how to like work with an AI tool and conversations with an AI, and then bring in your colleagues, and how you share. It starts to make you think about, is any documents that I'm sharing, is that free to share across individuals? Like, how do you think? So thinking about data literacy and data privacy, and and sort of like those topics are really important, in code literacy. All these things are going to be like super crucial. So we can't lose track of some of the really important key concepts of like software engineering and data science and things like that are going to be relevant, regardless.
Just one question, especially when you mentioned that the paradigm has shifted so much, and then also the pace of it has gone bonkers. What do you think about the traditional kind of like, or even not even like, traditional in person, but like classroom settings of, hey, here's a curriculum of lessons 1 to 12, and you sit through it for weeks on end or days on end, and you acquire certain skills. How do you see that changing versus, like, hey, right now everybody can have many assistants if they want to?
Yeah, I do think it will change. I mean, we've already seen this progression towards more micro learning from like really long, weeks long, boot camps and curriculum and things like that to smaller, more modular chunks of content. So that's been like, we've been progressing down that trend for a while. So this just like speeds that up again. It's like, so I think there's going to be a change in terms of expecting users to come and sit through like all this video content, for weeks, hours at a time, like attention spans are dwindling,
Mhm.
and I think it's really hard because folks they want to multitask, they want to be able to do a lot of things at once. So I think there's a few things that are likely to happen. I think, and this is where Gen AI can help us a lot is one, we have to meet users where they are. So again, we have to make sure that we're providing that content through their AI assistants. We have to make sure that our content is not just like SEO friendly, but is like assistant friendly. So making sure that and to do that, you need to build original content. You need to build technical content. So you can do that easily. AI can still help you, but building like real expertise from your technical practitioners and from your thought leaders is going to be super crucial in terms of feeding into those assistants and meeting users where they are. And then the other piece I think is just enabling users in whatever format they prefer. So great, you have like weeks long curriculum. That's a lot of content. That's really great. That's really going to be still very helpful. You've got a transcript, you've got captions. You could turn that into an audio only format. You could turn it into cheat sheets. You could turn it into study guides. You could turn it into a mini book, So the thinking about all the different formats, and like this is coming from like publishing background, is like, okay, how do I turn this into all these different formats? Because people learn in very different ways so that they can pick the pieces that are going to help them to kind of get to the next step, and then I think it's going to be interesting to see like if like boot camps really if they survive, because that
Yeah,
is
I was thinking the
Yeah.
it's
same thing.
I'm skeptical that they will, because so much so in data science and data engineering and AI, other than maybe the cloud certifications, there's not necessarily been a like tried and true, like you have to have the certification,
Yeah.
to like grow your career, to get a promotion and stuff like that. So, like I think certifications, they are great in terms of being able to demonstrate that you've achieved something, that you've like been tested, that you've like completed a learning path or a curriculum, or but I don't know if that is going to be so crucial. Like really we want to see that when I hire, I want to see that you're able to apply your knowledge, that you're able to that you can work collaboratively, that you're a good communicator, that you're curious, that you're interested in learning and growing your skills. And whether you have a certification or not, I do not care, so, and again, I'm not hiring super technical people. And if you're an engineering manager, like you might feel like very different in terms of what you expect, your folks that you're hiring, what kind of credentials that they should have. But I think, there also has been this sort of boundary between kind of traditional curriculum from an academic setting versus sort of what you learn on the job in industry. And so I think the formats are going to like spread apart again, like I think like there is a traditional curriculum that makes sense in person or virtual learning in an academic setting. That's probably going to stay the same for a while. Like I don't see that shifting very quickly. That is kind of how the whole system is set up. So that's very hard to change. But then I think once you get into a professional setting, it's being able to shift the way you learn is going to be really crucial. And then things just get messy when you're in industry. You're maybe used to working with pretty clean data sets in academia, and then you come into industry and then nothing's clean, so some of the skills are still gonna, like, data cleaning is still gonna be really important until some AI comes along that just, like, does it for you, and I'm not ever sure that that's, like, I don't know if that ever is a reality, but like, there are efficiencies, there are exciting opportunities, but yes, again, like, the data quality piece, the data cleaning piece, sort of the context of data is still gonna be super crucial, but I expect there still to be that gap between academia and industry that's really hard to resolve. But being able to, like, just have open conversations across, and we see a lot of this, I think the sort of, man, I'm really going on a tangent here, but like, I think like
Yeah, that's great.
in-person meeting, like, I don't know if in-person, like, I think in-person learning is still really important too, because people really want to trust their instructor. Like, they really want an instructor who is engaging, who they can trust, they feel like they have a good, even virtual rapport with, even if they never meet that person. But you see, like, if you're on Data Camp or Udemy or any of these sites, LinkedIn Learning, like, some of the most engaging instructors, they tend to be like some of the most popular content. So replacing that with an AI instructor, I don't think is, like, really the way to go. Again, like, we'll see. I'm sure people will try it. I'm sure we'll see what comes from that. But I think that that kind of the charisma and engaging, like, aspects of your instructor are still going to be pretty crucial. I think in-person learning is still going to be really useful for some folks to be able to, like, get hands-on experience, have someone come to your business and to, help you go through, I don't know, even like learning Salesforce or something. Like, it's still going to be really helpful to have folks who are SMEs and, like, particular technologies and skills. But so I think some things will change faster than others. And to be honest, like, I don't have all the answers. I'd make a lot more money if I did, but but I think we can start to see some of the trends that are shifting.
Yeah, I mean, the really interesting trend that we're all witnessing is this kind of like, especially the recent years, right? Like with the advent of internet, digital, like access to easy information, is like the rise of like individual instructors for, to your point, like whoever subject matter experts, they have websites that they can teach a course with very little investment upfront in terms of like overheads and stuff. And so it becomes this like hey, I really trust this person, so I absolutely would love to take their course kind of thing. And so learning feels very democratized right now. And so like I would imagine with AI, the quote unquote kind of like the divide between academia, which probably is in a more traditional sense, versus the more practical kind of like learning, is going to be is going to have a clearer and clearer divide.
Yeah. I wonder with those like boot camps or those like kind of online courses too. Like for me, even now I'm kind of like, oh, do I really want to take that? Or like I could just like talk to like ChatGPT and like have like, especially some of these courses where like how much of that did like they just use ChatGPT to create like versus like
Right.
themselves, like why not just
And
do
they
it
can be
myself?
very expensive.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a cheaper solution, you're going to go to YouTube, you're going to go to, your chat GPT and try to learn as much, like, you're going to try to get as far as you can with,
Yeah.
some
That's a
free
great way to put
solutions.
it.
Yeah. And then there will be a point where, like, you're going to need more help, and like,
Yeah.
and then, like, kind of getting, like, so maybe like some of these boot camps you don't start from the beginning. You start a little, like, there's more prerequisites. There's more for you to kind of do your own self-learning to get to a point. I do think that folks who run boot camps or and instructors who, have a good following and things like that, like, there's going to be plenty of work for them, even if, like, the boot camp format doesn't stick around, because, like, I think those people with, like, really strong personalities and like who are trusted trainers, like, they are going to do the best in, like, because there's going to be so much AI generated content that's, like, not very strong. So really leaning into having a really strong personality, kind of, building in your, like, kind of influencer mode, and, like, and really sort of spreading yourself out there and, like, getting your content out and building your brand. I think that is so crucial, whether you're a trainer or a potential author or an existing author. Those are the areas that, like, I would lean way into, just to be able to set yourself apart from the slop that's inevitably gonna be out there.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like, I imagine there's to be so much AI generated learning content that floods the market that's like low quality resources as well. And I'm wondering how, students will identify like what's the high quality content. Part of it's
Yeah,
like
there's a lot
finding
of
out people, those
counterfeit
brands.
content too.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry to talk over you there. But yeah, I think there's a lot of like, I mean, if you look at Amazon, there's just a ton of just fake content out there that's just, oh, they saw a best-selling book, someone went in and kind of tried to recreate it with AI and of course didn't do a very good job, but it confuses consumers that they don't necessarily know which is the original and which one they're supposed to get. So another reason, like get your brand out there or align with a brand like O'Reilly or like with a really like what, like a brand that has like a visual identity because like the trust behind that brand helps too. So I do a little side hustle helping like as a publishing consultant, helping potential authors, get book deals and help them figure out their publishing career, how to start or how to move it forward. So that's another thing I just see a lot. I see opportunities with these like pretty well established brands. Like this is a very hard time to self-publish. It's very hard to get visibility if you don't already have a brand that you've sort of been growing and building out. It doesn't mean you can't start with on a Substack and start to build that out, and start to build a brand. I think that's totally worth doing. But it takes time to get recognized. It requires very different skills, a lot of again, we kind of keep coming back to some of these soft skills, a lot of collaboration, communication, and networking and negotiation. And like some of these like C skills are going to be so important to like set yourself like human skills that set you apart from AI, that make you a recognized expert.
Yeah, do you have any tips for, you mentioned some of the like, trusted brands, trusted people that people can follow, look up to, that kind of stuff. Do you have an idea for example, like, hey, if somebody is like, hey, I want to learn certain things, and then probably the first thing is like Google search, or I guess, yeah, I mean, let's narrow the funnel, right? Like first thing, Google search, 5 million results, and they're like, okay, someone's got to have a video about this. Use YouTube search, 3 million
Yeah.
results. It's like, okay, somebody's probably gonna have some other material for it. Like how should they kind of think about, like, hey, oh, and then they would go to ChatGPT obviously afterwards, and then like,
Yeah.
hey, many sources as well.
Yeah.
How do they fish themselves out of like a ocean of information in that sense?
Yeah. I frequently go to ChatGPT and just say, "Hey, give me your top 5, recommendations for X." If you can, like, I would narrow your search, like, on your own is like, and just have a conversation and say, "Hey, I am a beginning learner. This is what I'm looking to do. I want to learn Python from a trusted source, and I want to learn fast. I want to use AI to help me, get there. My goal is to, change jobs and, I want to get into this field or this vertical. I want to get into like healthcare and, or finance. Like narrow it down as much as you can. Like this is what I'm attempting to do and give as many parameters as you can. And then that will help like a generative AI tool like ChatGPT to get you some recommendations. And, I frequently ask, okay, like, show me your work, show me where you found this information, like send me links,
Right.
or tell me how old is this content? If it's more than like 2 or 3 years old, I'm not going to bother with it. How do I make sure I'm getting, the newest information or just like, who are your trusted sources? I think tapping into the network that where you want to learn is really crucial. So I might ask ChatGPT, for example, is who are the top 5 kind of influencers or experts in this field? And then follow those people, find them on LinkedIn, follow them. Do they have a podcast? Like, do they make recommendations? Do they have a book? Like start to absorb some of that content. And then especially if they have a podcast, it means they're probably bringing in other guests that have a similar level of expertise. And you start to build your network that way. It's super helpful. I learn things every day just from doing that. And it was a requirement for a job, for when I was in publishing. So now I'm like, oh, like kind of by accident, I built this whole knowledge base of, really smart people in this in tech and AI and data science, data engineering. And I'm always finding like either building my knowledge or finding other people to pay attention to and seeing, and then you see patterns. So then you start to see, oh, what's trending and like, where do I have opportunities? And a lot of these folks will just say, I mean, build real relationships with them. Like go to a conference if you can, or go to a meetup. It doesn't have to be like $1,000 conference, but go to meetups, talk to people around you, like build real relationships with them, because then you can help each other out.
Yeah.
Don't just go to the biggest like data influencer and ask them for a list of courses that you should take. Please don't do that. Like, but build real relationships with people and be able to share. There should be a give and take. And that might be, and that sharing, let's say you're new to the space, you might just say like, hey, I found this podcast and it was like so interesting. I learned so much from this. Do you have any recommendations? Have you found any good podcasts that you like? Could you send any my way? Like, if you're like, there's something that everyone can contribute, even if you're new to the space,
Yes.
or hey, you read an article that's like really thought provoking, or, and even if you like totally didn't understand it, just be like, hey, I read this article, I learned X, Y, Z, but like, I totally don't get this part. Like, what did you think? Did you read this? Like, again, I just think like human connections, super important. And yeah, refining what you're looking for based on sort of what your goals are. Know what your goals are, like understand, have a plan, and maybe that doesn't start easily, but you start to dig in and you start to just absorb, and then it starts to come together. You start to like kind of decide like where you want to explore more. But yeah, I would just keep digging and don't be afraid of expanding your network. I mean, I'm very liberal with who I accept on LinkedIn. Like, if you've got someone in common, I will definitely accept your invite. I try not to accept people who are like selling me stuff all the time, but they get through. So but yeah, I would just be in the space, and I think that it's an industry, especially in the data and AI space, that people are they're very generous with knowledge, and they do want to help people out. They might have limited time, but they do want to contribute back to the space and to the people around them, so that they're all learning from each other. So yeah, so I would definitely encourage people to be vocal, to, even if you're wrong, like don't be afraid to like make mistakes. Like don't be afraid to be wrong. That is the best way to get some attention. It is if I'm like urgently needing like some advice or some recommendations, putting the wrong information out there is like tried and true way of getting some attention. So that's another piece. Like don't be afraid to like have a wrong assumption, and embrace learning opportunities among your network.
Yeah, I saw
That's
some
so
like
good.
I saw some like the wrong thing. I saw some, I don't know, not a meme, but some snapshot of someone on like Reddit or Stacked Overflow. This was like before ChatGPT, where like they're trying to get help from people and then no one was helping them. And then they like posted like a wrong example and being like, this is the best way to do it. And all of a sudden everyone like got in there. It was just like,
Whoa,
grilling them, but also like now they're solving it for them. They're like, yeah, thank
Yep.
you. This is what I wanted, actually.
It's like just tap into human nature of like wanting to fix things. Like that's definitely Stack Overflow is the way to go.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why Wikipedia is so successful, because I heard people just put in
Totally.
like wrong information, and then like everyone else is like, no, that's wrong. So let me give you the right things. And
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
it's not by like contributing incrementally to it. It's like by fixing
Correcting.
stuff that's systematically wrong.
Yeah.
I
We used
do
to
think
say in
that
publishing too that like if someone gave you a negative review, it could be extremely helpful for your book, because people will see it and they'll be like, no, I disagree. I thought this book was great. So having like some negative reviews and like having
Yeah.
controversy is like
Yeah.
super helpful in getting books sold and continuing a conversation. I know a lot of authors are like, they get bummed about negative reviews. I was like, don't be like, the conversation is good. Like as long as it's relevant to your content, like great.
Yeah. I think one nugget I wanted to pull out for our audience of what you said earlier, which is in any sort of like learning journey that that our viewers or listeners might be embarking on, super important to be super clear about where you want to get to. I think it's super easy to be like, I just want to learn this. But then there's no like, okay, then what? Or okay, so what? Like, what do you want to learn about it? Why do you want to learn about it? What's the end goal? And what you demonstrated, Jess, in terms of that prompt that you would ask ChatGPT or any LLMs out there is that, hey, step back, think through your plan and your purpose, your goal, and what is the end destination you're trying to get to. Because that way, then you're not just setting sail a ship that's going nowhere or like just going whatever, the sea takes you, but you're like,
Yeah.
I'm actively trying to get here. Which is, and we'll probably come back to it, which I feel like is, for myself especially, that's a really great reminder because sometimes I'm just like drowning in consumption mode of like doom scrolling new things, but I'm like, where am I going at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Because time is finite.
Yeah. And it does take that like mental work because the algorithms are going to encourage you to keep scrolling and just keep going down rabbit holes and like and not think about like what are my goals? Like you can map it out so that you've got this like, and it's okay. You can go down rabbit holes. That's fun. That's interesting. But like as long if you've got your plan mapped out, it helps you kind of like remember what your North Star is and like what you're trying to achieve and sort of and helps you just like, make sure that you're on track yourself and can kind of be a good reminder for you.
So good.
What originally kind of got you into this field of, well, I guess even like into like your journey into like O'Reilly and getting into like technical like writing, and then later on maybe like how you transitioned over to Anaconda and your role there?
Yeah. So I've always just had a love of content, of literature. I was an English major in high school. Even then I knew like I want to be a book editor. Like I knew like early on. So that was kind of like always my plan. I worked at like the writing center, my university. I went to Denison University in Ohio and and just really like and at that, I was tutoring and I was like helping people improve their writing and it's so fulfilling to help people sort of when you see their progress and you help them like just take their writing to the next level, especially if they're like English is not their first language and you help them just like broaden their understanding of a language, which it's totally replicable to tech too, which is not just coding languages, but a whole different like vocabulary.
Yeah, truly.
So that was really appealing to me. I did take some computer science courses in high school and college. I really liked it. I really liked the like problem solving like aspect of it. But I'm a big extrovert, so I was already spending a lot of time like when there was such a thing as a computer lab. I don't know if those still exist, but I was always in the computer lab writing papers for my English degree. And I was like, and then I was always in the computer lab doing computer science. And I was like, okay, I can't like be shut in a computer lab all the time. Like I was potentially going to minor in computer science, but I ended up not. So it was interesting. I sort of built a little bit of a foundation in programming in like Java and C++. And then so kind of, I really didn't return to it for a while. I was working in like a nonfiction, like I've always been in instructional nonfiction. That's always been done like outdoor recreation books, camping, hiking and things like
Cool.
that, which was I really loved too. And then I moved into a little bit more lifestyle, cooking and health and fitness and things like that. But I was always like one of the more tech savvy people at the publisher. So I was frequently helping people get onboarded with a new system or just like helping get things organized and things like that. Once I saw the role at O'Reilly, I was like, oh, it could be, I'm not very technical, but it would be interesting to like start going down that path a little bit more. There's more money in it. That helped. So at the time they did hire me for my list was product management and UX design, which was less technical, but it started to get me like in the space and understanding kind of technical books and sort of the O'Reilly publishing program. And then they were seeking an editor for data engineering for quite a while. And finally we're like, Jess, can you just move over to data engineering? I was like, oh boy. And it was, and I again was like, not very technical. It was the space was blowing up. I knew I could just make a big impact by building out a list. There was just a lot of gaps to fill. And I was like, this could be really great for my career. And it really was. That was great. I remember going like my first Strata conference, which was a big conference that O'Reilly used to put on twice a year, and just like going and like knowing nothing, like did not know what anything was about, like what even like where to start. So I kind of just I just found some like friendly speakers among the group and just like sat them down and said like, hey, you did a talk on this. Like, can you just tell me a little bit, like, why is it important to understand this? Like, how is it relevant to like the future of data science or data engineering, and just like talk to me like I'm a fifth grader and like walk me through it. And everyone was totally happy to do that, well,
That's
mostly,
cool.
almost everyone, so just like embracing the like, I don't know anything. What do I need to know? Like, what are the patterns? What are the trends? Like, where, what are really the most important thing is like, where do users have problems? Like, what solutions can a book help provide? Like, what are the biggest pain points? So, finding the pain points and then helping to solve them with content is like essentially what I've done my whole career. And that's very fulfilling, just to be able to help people solve their problems and learn. But it is in like embracing like, the sort of curiosity and and knowing I'm going to do stuff wrong for a little while. And cause that's like the best learning experience you can have. So yeah. And then I loved working at O'Reilly. It was the best job, but there was like limited mobility to move up at the time. And so I knew Peter Wang, who at the time was running Anaconda and is still with Anaconda as our chief AI officer. And, we were talking about content needs and things like that. I was like, oh, you guys are building a content program. Like, that's interesting. And ended up moving over and helping build the learning platform in Anaconda. So there's been some through lines, right? But it's always sort of in the upskilling and problem solving areas that it's been really a fun place to be.
That's so
true.
cool.
Yeah.
I think in some ways it kind of mirrors our journey on this podcast on AI as well, which is like we started having guests on the AI topic literally like from all aspects because we believe that this is going to be like a non-negotiable skill that anybody in the data space is going to need, and so we go really heavy on it. And so we have like I still remember our first AI guest literally was teaching people like, hey, what is the very basics of AI? And then it's kind of like a 5-year literally like that was the prompt, but like he's not a machine, but like we gave him that. It's like, hey, like talk to us as if all of us are 5 years old, and like paint the picture of how we got to where we are today. And then like it kind of snowballed into episodes on how to become AI engineer, episodes on how to use certain tools to help your data science career, so on and so forth. And it literally is like, if we kind of think back to it, it's like we started at a 5-year-old and now we graduated. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. It is really cool. And that like in a couple of years we'll be learning something else. Like you just know like this whole space is going to change pretty dramatically. Like I think that's the only thing we do know about it is that like change is going to come. And you're starting to see, some really interesting like use cases for AI. I think there was recently this breakthrough. There's been a few breakthroughs in medicine. I was listening to a podcast talking about one that just helped these researchers find sort of a new antibiotic that was, or sorry, a new medicine that was assisting with a antibiotic resistant disease. So these like, that really just helped, like that could have taken 2 decades, to find on their own because the researchers were literally like testing soil. So like it was really time consuming, but they were able to feed in like, here are some things that have worked, and then, let's like explore what others might work. And then that process that might have taken like decades, like really came to fruition like 18 months or something like that. So it really can speed, and that is still a long time, but like it's so much faster than, and like who knows, like you got to have a lot of luck to find breakthrough medicine. But so it's really interesting where it helps people become more efficient, and that it just understands like like patterns and human understanding and human patterns. Not that it is a human understanding, but it really compiles so much that we have big opportunities to just, again, like it's just another way to be more connected to other people's research and experience that we can learn from.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like it's becoming parts of every industry, or it has opportunity to become part of every industry. Historically, it's interesting because Hi and I work in data science, but we weren't looking at AI a few years ago. Even it was really only like the kind of like AI practitioners, not even a lot of the ML people were really in thinking about that. Some of the ones I work with. And yeah, I'm just kind of wondering as things evolve, like who the new learners of AI are going to be like medicine and health makes a lot of sense. Like I
Hmm.
wonder who's going to be at the forefront after kind of tech is obviously very natural. Who's
Hmm.
going to be later on? Like when is it going to be hitting like
Yeah.
agriculture or like
Yeah.
finance and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think there's like big opportunity. I think there's big opportunities in finance, especially because like a lot of them are very Python literate.
Hmm.
And Python just assists in so many interesting ways. At Anaconda, we partnered with Microsoft on Python and Excel. So there's like just lots of like interesting opportunities there for folks who are in finance and where AI can assist them. And, especially it's not super clear to me how good AI is with math. It seems to be improving.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's an interesting area. And it's funny because like before this like Gen AI boom, I really thought that self-driving cars were gonna happen much faster. I thought,
Yeah,
the last time I bought a car, which was I think 2017, I was like, this is gonna be the last car I buy. Like everything, it'll eventually
totally.
be all self-driving. I won't even need one for myself. And I'm like, well, that didn't happen that way. So it's interesting like how things shift and just like what kind of automation, and also like what's like I think, this is a heavy topic, but like that what's connected to big systems like government that are slow or academia that are
Hmm.
slower to change, like though, and like driving is one of those things.
Hmm.
So that's a resistant area. That's a really hard area to innovate, versus like you see a lot of other areas in tech that they're not so dependent on some of these like big legacy systems. So it seems like those areas you're going to have a little bit more freedom. There's not a lot of regulation right now, so and I'm sure these companies are taking advantage of that. I suspect eventually there will be, but you never know. But yeah, I think not even just because the U.S. There's less in the US, less regulation here, but I think other countries are really working to put more regulation as they do. Like the US is going to have to follow suit just to be able to do business in these other countries. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But right now it's a very like, it's really open for innovation. There's a lot of exciting opportunities. I'm more hopeful than I am afraid, although certainly I went to a Data Day Texas conference back in January and heard a lot of fear from folks about what could happen and the lack of guardrails and that sort of thing. So we've seen a total mix in terms of yeah, like fear of what AI can become and
Yeah.
and then where opportunities are. So I'm just a always an optimist, but I fully acknowledge I have some blind spots there, but it's certainly interesting time to be in this space.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably also it's so interesting you brought it up. Like back in 2017, you thought that was the last car that you're ever gonna have to, I guess, drive. There's also a lot of skeptics of AI out there as well. Like some, like probably most people anchor on the fact that, hey, like what is my closest interaction with AI other than ChatGPT, Siri, right, or whatever is on their phone, Alexa, and
Yeah.
it hasn't changed in 10 years.
Right.
They still
Hmm.
can't do
Totally.
anything, and you're telling me like, we're gonna, like this whole boom thing is for real. I think like obviously we like, hey, we encourage people to use all the Gen AI tools out there to, like get a little bit more familiar with it, but it is a divide, right? Like, like some people think it's still not coming, some people are thinking it's like, hey, it's gonna wipe us all out pretty quickly,
Yeah.
but
Well,
it's
and I
so important
wonder,
to.
yeah, I wonder how, like, the sort of top of the industry, how long they will remain at the top. If like Siri's not changing, if like,
Oh yeah.
Amazon, it's like all this counterfeit content on their website and all these counterfeit products. And like I mean there's certainly backlash there or like or concern that the innovation is not happening. So how long will Amazon, Apple like stay at the top of the market? You see Microsoft, I think, making some big jumps in the market and doing some interesting things. Anaconda was just named in Fast Company's like top innovative companies in the world, which is great. This is, I think, maybe our first time on that list.
Nice.
So yeah, so it's exciting. Like, like you're gonna see, I think, new companies like kind of leading the crop, and some who are kind of stuck, and some who've kind of really grown outside of, really way past kind of the startup innovative culture are, although Microsoft still at the top does have a real does have a real sort of enterprise
Yeah.
culture, but it'll be interesting to see what other companies, like Anthropic, like OpenAI is really doing it too. Are going to start kind of like coming to the top of that list and really driving more innovation than the folks that we're used to seeing, like Meta and Apple and Amazon.
Yeah.
You had a point about these more established, large kind of entities maybe being slower to progress or adopt AI, like academia was like when you mentioned. Maybe could you tell us a little bit about kind of like, well, maybe first like what you do in your role at Anaconda, and then would also love to hear kind of how like Anaconda is kind of bridging that gap between academia and industry.
Yeah. I think a lot, my role is again just trying to help solve pain points. So, what are the common pain points where one of those big stages is students coming out of academia and sort of and joining industry or looking for a job, and sort of identifying what skills they need to build. And it's a lot of them are not what they necessarily focused on in school. We talk about even just a life skill, like you don't get a lot of financial literacy in school, but then you become an adult and you're living on your own and something you got to figure that out really quick.
Yeah.
So it's not just in this space that there's that gap. So helping to understand like what are the most common areas where I think that's sort of like dealing with, dirty data is like one of the most common that users take the most time cleaning data, and sort of building those skills are one of the first things that we focused on because we knew that's a big jump, from academia. Yeah, and I think it's tricky because academia, is a different system. It's built on different rewards. You get, your goal is to get tenure, and then your goal is not necessarily, or you're not necessarily motivated in a ton of ways to like to be at the cutting edge. You're not maybe not motivated at all to be at the cutting edge of technology. And maybe you don't want to be because maybe the cutting edge of technology is not sustainable, is not a space that's going to be relevant for years and years to come. So it's a little bit of the publishing aspect, like where we would not necessarily publish a book on every new tool, every new, trend, but sort of trying to understand what's the sweet spot, what topics are going to be relevant for like 3 to 5 years in print, and that is sort of an area probably that universities are trying to do the same thing. It's like, okay, if we need to evolve our program or we need a new program, like what's going to be relevant for long enough to make
Yeah.
that kind of
Such a good
investment.
point.
So a lot of it is the time and money investment, and is like where, and those can be tight, so figuring out where what's your best ROI is sort of key, I think, in that case too.
In that vein, just for people who are learning, just period, going forward, there's tools, there's AI, there's many information out there. What do you think is the most important skill sets, kind of that's gonna remain evergreen forever, forever and
Yeah.
ever, that people
Yeah.
should get good at?
Yeah, I think communication is so crucial. That's already important if you want a career in data, because being able to communicate insights from data is super crucial. And even if you're sort of a data engineer more on the pipeline, is just being able to like collaborate with your colleagues to enable the data scientists sort of further up the pipeline who are going to need access to data. So communication has always been super relevant. It's going to be just as relevant going forward, if not more so. And that, like, I think it's like, where do these Gen AI tools assist us? Like, communication is one of them. Like, you can get help from your Gen AI tool to craft a Slack message, to craft an email,
Oh, so true.
and you should, and collaboration is super important. I think there are a lot of kind of legacy software developers who are resistant to change, who like the tool that they like. They want to do what they're doing. They don't want, they've paid very well, for the work that they do and for their expertise. I think a lot. I'm seeing a lot of tech companies are retrenching a little bit. They're reducing their staff because it's just a chaotic, market right now. And, I think we saw a lot of it in the last year, a lot of rifts. Reduction in force. So how for folks who are making a ton of money, I would recommend that they make themselves very easy to work with, like that they collaborate. I occasionally see folks who are like, asking software engineers, really strong, great experts, but they're asking for help in little things that why do you need someone to book your travel?
Yeah.
Like make sure you got high ROI. If you're paid really well, like make sure you're showing value in your job. And that's communication, that's collaboration. Essentially use AI tools to help you with some of the like menial tasks that you like may not feel like doing. And because like it can make your job easier. The other day I was like was struggling with my JetBlue flight because I couldn't get it up on my calendar. I asked Claude to be like, hey, can you create an ICS file like with here's the flight information, and it did, and it added it to my calendar. I'm like, great,
Nice.
like easy peasy, So stuff like that. I think just communication, like content review is another one. Writing. Now everyone should be able to write. You have no excuse. You don't have to be a great writer, but you can get a lot further along than you might have if you didn't have great writing skills, or if English is not your first language. Just run everything through AI, and you don't have to please don't just take what it gives you. Please read it. But everyone should work a little bit more on their writing skills, on their communication skills, because AI gets you a lot further along, and it really up levels you. I think I saw a really funny example of this on Twitter, which I'm still addicted to. I can't help it. X, I guess we call it now, of like someone whose boss was like kind of a micromanager, like was regularly asking for updates on email and like wanted things in a certain format. And so they just trained an LLM to like auto respond the boss's emails to like everyone in the way that they clearly like to hear it. They got a promotion because their boss loved they were getting all this communication.
That's
that It was
awesome.
in the format that they like. Like sometimes it's just that easy. It's like just use an AI tool to automate things. Like there's a lot of opportunities there, many that I think we've yet to discover. But I think again, it's like talk to your friends, doesn't have to be Twitter, but like find your community and like learn from them. I've learned so much of just like what I can do with AI just from like listening in on sort of what's helped other people.
Remember, so Hi and I used to work together at Nextdoor. I remember uh, one time with the data team all got together and we did this I don't know, workshop kind of thing where you like take some test or whatever and it tells you like what kind of communicator you are and how you like to be communicated to, and a bunch of different things. Like some people are like, oh, I'm a really aggressive person and I want to like be very direct and go. And someone else like, well, I'm like, and I don't want to wait for the data. And someone else like, I would need to have data to support everything anyone says. And there's people who are like in between. Some people are just like, oh, I'm like a people pleaser and I just want everyone to be happy. It's like, man, everyone should take that test and then like get a Slack integration. And then if I
Oh
write
my God.
I write it and it's just
Totally.
like changes it to whoever that person is.
So smart. We do a similar, personality kind of, or we used to. I think we're not using it anymore, but we had like those I forget. It was Gallup Strengths Finder, I think. And but it was really informative. Yeah, like what are people's strengths, and
Yeah, it's
like
pretty interesting.
how do you collaborate? And that's a great example of like, yeah, how does like an LLM potentially help you collaborate better and communicate better?
The underlying important point there, though, is you would have to know how to write the prompt for it to build that bot.
True.
Because
True.
if you can't, then it doesn't matter. And so
Yeah.
what you just said reminds me of I forgot who said it like before, but it was like, hey, the most languages that you need to learn, number one is English, number two is prompt engineering, or like
Yeah.
whatever you do to talk to a computer at that time.
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
never been more true, actually.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's interesting to see kind of like what happens with programming languages. Python's the language of AI. It just like has it now cemented itself as like such a predominant language because AI is so popular, or is it less so because people are going to be mostly conversational programming like in the
Yeah.
future? And I'm very biased, so I think a little bit more so the former than the latter, but it'll be interesting to see. And, Python has its challenges too. It's certainly not the fastest language either, but yeah, I'll be so curious to see kind of like where that goes. But I think even, and if you are, and I don't mean to like deter anyone from really expanding their technical skills, like technical folks are still going to be super important. Like you are going to be the ones that build and create automations and innovation and things like that. Like that is still really important. But it's especially as you start to see like the job market start to shrink a little bit, it's those people who have cross-functional skills
Yeah.
that are the most valuable, that stick around, that get to do, kind of get to do the most interesting stuff. So I would advise folks not to pigeonhole yourself. It's good to have an expertise. It's good to have, like kind of a long path in one area, but you've got to have those soft skills to back it up because, it's just going to be even more crucial, going forward.
And I know we've talked about this before, but it's like if you're someone who already has great soft skills, you have a huge opportunity right now because the barrier to entry just like really decreased for you in terms of
Yeah.
like growing your technical skills. And if you're someone who is very technical but doesn't have those soft skills, it's like maybe take a minute or take a little bit
Yeah.
and start investing some time in your soft skills and like don't worry, you're not going to fall behind on the technical skill stuff because it's so
Yeah.
easy to learn it now.
Yeah. And, I was speaking with a college senior who she reached out because I think she saw me on some other podcast and she just, was interested in picking my brain. And I had some time, jumped on a phone call with her and she was really concerned because her colleagues, a lot of them are software engineers, and they were like, giving her a hard time because she didn't have the technical skills that they did, or she didn't understand some of the technical issues and oh, how do you not know that yet? And I was like, okay, that kind of gatekeeping like
Hmm.
is not good and is not realistic. Like, I don't see that at all at Anaconda. There's very little. Everyone's very open and really strong, healthy culture. But I'm like, but listen, like to this woman, I was like, you look at your skills, you're networking, you're reaching out to like people in the field to like learn more, like you're curious, you're
Yeah.
committed. She had a capstone project that she kind of walked me through a little bit. She was doing experiments, she was doing data science. I was like these are the skills I want to see like in a resume and an interview, how technical they are. Like that's a little easier to learn now than it used to be, like you just said, Sean. So folks who have that sort of broad wealth of skills, like that's where a lot of value is going forward. So I would definitely invest in those areas, and I wouldn't gatekeep because that sucks. Don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Or invest in some other trade. I'm like, what can the robots not take over? Like, I should learn how to brew beer. And then,
Yeah,
like, if this goes the wrong way, it's like, this, first of all, there'd be a lot of sad people that want to drink. And then I don't know how to brew beer. So, like,
yeah,
robots will
right.
be able to do that. Not until I
That's
get
always
the
gonna
physical
know.
stuff.
When the economy goes down, being able to be around alcohol like that does help.
Yes.
That's never going away.
Yes. That
Well,
is.
that's a true thing about like that's the good thing about like learning. Like when the economy dips, like learning goes up. Because
Yeah.
everyone's trying to upskill. So it's like a very like sort of economy resistant area to be in. So I feel if you want to build training, if you want to assist in training, like there's great opportunities out there, and there's a lot of people doing it. And we need the people who can help us think, where is this going down the road? Where, like, as we break up these big week-long curriculum and boot camps and certifications and things like that, like, what's next? What's next for learning? Like, how do we anticipate where it's going, and how do we think outside the box? So coming from a different background can be really helpful in us thinking like, and just not doing the same thing over again and sort of getting stuck in a sort of a legacy approach, which I myself am guilty of frequently. So that's why I'm always just trying to talk to people about like where we should be going, where we have big opportunities, like what we should try. I think I'm very lucky at Anaconda. There's a really healthy culture for trying new things, for exploring and experimenting. And if you work at a company, if you're a business leader, I encourage you to like try to build that kind of culture of curiosity
Hmm.
and enabling learning and enabling people to make mistakes and be wrong and share their findings. And break down silos and things like that, because it's going to be so crucial. Like those are the companies that are going to find a lot of success, is where innovation and curiosity is really celebrated, and that like you're breaking down the barriers and the gatekeeping issues that, that you see sometimes, because we have a big opportunity. We can't waste our time like with that sort of nonsense.
Yeah, totally. I know we're coming up on time here. I do want to ask a question on, do you have any hacks for upskilling? Because people are busy. People are like, hey, I need something quick. I don't have the time to, like learn something so immersive or it takes so long. What's been the effective route that you've seen of people learning? Like who grasps onto knowledge fastest?
Yeah. I mean, my hack is networking, and I'm a natural. I'm very social, very extrovert. So I'm like constantly networking. And if it's a skill that is not, something that comes easily to you, I encourage you to keep trying, because like so much value, every job I get is out of networking. It's, almost never is it because I like applied to some role that I saw on the internet. So that's important for your career regardless. But it is super helpful in just like learning just like networking with your colleagues. So for example, we have like a women leaders collaboration channel, and we have like a monthly get together. And so
Very
frequently,
cool.
and it's all managers. So it's like, hey, like what resources do you and your teams use? And when we started, we didn't know. We were like, oh, I guess we better like dig into this a little bit. And now we have this like really amazing list of like, recommendations for our individual contributors to review and upskill and sort of build the skills that they need to really be successful. So just like, yeah, networking with your colleagues, like, like set aside time in your role, like so that you're doing work on your career, and you're doing time to build your career, time for learning, and time for networking. Like those are really, and it could be like a virtual happy hour. Like I still do those too. Like, and it's great. But like pulling yourself out of your like day to day, to do items is really important, to see the big picture, to build your relationships, to sort of understand how you can help other people. Like, jumping in and helping someone solve a problem, man, it's always going to pay back in the end of like, just making a little bit of use for your time to help, smooth the path for someone, like has just like, exponentially increased my opportunities and my relationship. So that's, I think the biggest hack is networking.
Awesome.
Nice. Well, thanks for joining us. Oh yeah, actually, before we go, where can our audience like kind of follow your work, learn more about what you're doing, or anything you want to pitch? I think I saw you're like working on a book, or you recently like wrote a novel, or you're pitching a novel as well. I know it's not
Yeah.
isn't data related, but
Yes. I think the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. Like I said, I'm pretty liberal about accepting requests. I love if you add a note to say, hey, like I saw you on the Data Neighbor podcast, so I know like how you found me. I am on Twitter and Blue Sky, but I'm not a very active participant. But I think about occasionally, like I just want to know what I'm doing with those platforms, do more. So, and yeah, I am. I mentioned I'm doing publishing consulting. So if you're interested in writing a technical book, reach out. I'd love to hear more about your project and see if there's an opportunity for us to work together. I'm trying to be careful about building that out too much, because it really is on the side, and I I have limited time, like we all do. And then yeah, I wrote a novel. I began pitching it last year or a couple years ago now. I didn't get folks jump right on it. So it's sort of in a like holding pattern for now, but I started writing another novel. I sort of picked up a project that I had set aside because the research was going to be so involved. It's like a Victorian era novel, but now with
okay.
ChatGPT, it helps me so much to
Do you use like the deep
research.
research thing with ChatGPT? The deep research thing?
I am actually just using the free
Okay.
version on that one right now, although I do actually want to like invest a little further because I use it a lot and I hit my limits frequently. So,
Mhm.
and it also helps me like rephrase stuff in like the vernacular of the time. So
Yeah,
it's
that's cool.
really helped a lot, which is cool. It's just really fun now to feel like you've got a writing partner, and helps. So I generate it all myself, but it does really assist in my editing process.
That's really cool. Yeah, editing, that's like such a good use case. I mean, we were talking about editing for Slack messages, but yeah,
Yeah,
novels as well.
totally. Emails, like contracts, proposals, all your stuff, your Slack slide decks, all that. Great.
So cool.
Great. Well, hi, you want to close this out actually?
Sure. So it's been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Jess. I think our audience has really learned a lot, and hopefully it rekindles their enthusiasm for learning again. And thank you all, the viewers and listeners. Thank you for listening. If you found value in this content, please like, comment, and subscribe. It will really help us with the algorithm so that we can bring more content just like this for you in the future. With that, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jess.
Thanks, Jess.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.